I never thought much about bracelets until the day I found one on my desk at work. It was made of rope, 3 strands braided together in this intricate pattern that looked way too complicated for something so small. The colors were ocean blue and silver gray, my 2 favorite colors, though I'd never told anyone at the office that. There was no note, just the bracelet sitting there on top of my keyboard when I came back from lunch. I picked it up and turned it over in my hands. The craftsmanship was incredible. Each strand was perfectly tight, the pattern symmetrical, and there was this little sliding knot that let you adjust the size. Someone had spent real time on this. I slipped it onto my wrist and pulled the knot tight. It fit perfectly. "Nice bracelet," my coworker Maya said as she passed my cubicle. "Where'd you get it?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "It was just here when I got back." She raised an eyebrow. "Secret admirer?" I laughed it off, but my heart was doing this weird flutter thing in my chest. A secret admirer. The idea seemed ridiculous. I was 26, worked in a mid-level marketing firm, and spent most of my free time reading or going to the climbing gym. I wasn't the kind of guy who had secret admirers, but I wore the bracelet home that day, and I kept wearing it. It became this thing I'd touch without thinking, running my fingers over the braided pattern during meetings or while I was waiting for my computer to load. Something about it felt solid and real in a way that most things in my life didn't. The second bracelet appeared a week later. Same place, same situation. I came back from a coffee run, and there it was. This one was different colors, forest green and copper, but the pattern was even more complex. It must have taken hours to make. I looked around the office, trying to figure out who could have left it, but everyone was focused on their screens or in meetings. No one was paying attention to me at all. I started keeping a mental list of suspects. There was Derek from accounting, who always smiled at me in the break room, or maybe it was James from the design team who'd invited me to happy hour a few times, but neither of them seemed like the bracelet-making type, and besides, how would they know my favorite colors? Then there was Finn. Finn worked in the cubicle directly across from mine, close enough that I could see him if I leaned back in my chair. He'd started 3 months ago, transferred from the Portland office, and from day one I'd been hyper-aware of his presence. He had this dark curly hair that was always slightly messy, like he'd been running his hands through it, and these green eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He wore flannel shirts and had a small tattoo of a compass on his left forearm that I'd definitely spent too much time looking at. Finn was quiet, focused on his work, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me. Not in a creepy way, just these quick glances that made my stomach flip. We'd had maybe 5 real conversations, all of them surface-level stuff about projects and deadlines, but there was something in the way he listened when I talked, leaning forward slightly, giving me his complete attention, that made me feel like I was the only person in the room. I've been trying not to think too hard about why I noticed these things about Finn, or why my day felt brighter when he said good morning, or why I'd started taking my lunch break at the same time as him, just so we might end up in the break room together. I'd dated women in college, had a few relationships that were fine, but never felt quite right, and I'd been telling myself for years that I just hadn't met the right person yet. But lately, especially since Finn arrived, I'd been questioning that narrative. The third bracelet appeared on a Friday. This one was the most beautiful yet, made with leather cord instead of rope, braided in this complex 4-strand pattern with tiny silver beads worked into the design. I was staring at it, completely mesmerized, when I heard Finn's voice. "You collect those?" I looked up. He was standing at the edge of my cubicle, holding a coffee cup, and his expression was casual, but his eyes were watching me carefully. "I guess so," I said. "Someone keeps leaving them for me." "That's pretty cool," he said. "They're well made. Whoever's making them knows what they're doing." There was something in his tone, something I couldn't quite identify. I held up my wrist, showing him the first bracelet I was still wearing. "Have you ever seen anyone making these? Like, in the break room or anything?" Finn shook his head, but a slight flush crept up his neck. "No, sorry, but rope braiding is actually pretty difficult. It takes a lot of practice to get patterns that clean." "You know about rope braiding?" "A little," he said, and that flush deepened. "I used to climb a lot, so I learned some knots and braiding techniques. It's kind of meditative once you get the hang of it." My heart was pounding now. Finn climbed. I climbed. Finn knew about rope braiding. The bracelets were made of climbing rope. This couldn't be a coincidence. Maybe I should learn, I said, testing the waters. These are really beautiful. Yeah, Finn said softly, and for a moment our eyes met and held. They really are. He left after that, going back to his desk, and I sat there staring at the bracelet in my hand. My mind was racing. Was it Finn? Had Finn been making these for me? And if he had, what did that mean? I spent the entire weekend thinking about it. Actually, thinking is too mild a word. I obsessed over it. I wore all 3 bracelets stacked on my wrist and found myself touching them constantly, wondering if Finn's hands had been the ones to braid each strand, if he'd been thinking of me while he worked. The idea made my chest tight with something that felt like hope and terror mixed together. Because if it was Finn, then this meant something. This meant he'd been paying attention to me, learning my favorite colors, spending hours creating something just to make me happy. This was romantic. This was the kind of gesture that meant feelings, real feelings, and I had to figure out what I felt in return. Except I already knew. Sitting alone in my apartment on Saturday night, staring at the bracelets on my wrist, I finally let myself admit what I'd been avoiding for months. I had feelings for Finn. Real, intense, terrifying feelings. When he walked into the office, my whole body came alive. When he smiled at me, I felt like I could float. When we talked, even about mundane work stuff, I hung on every word. I wanted to know everything about him, wanted to hear his laugh, wanted to know what he thought about and dreamed about and cared about. And the most terrifying part was that I wanted to touch him. I wanted to know what his hand would feel like in mine, what his hair would feel like if I ran my fingers through it, what it would be like to kiss him. These weren't abstract thoughts anymore. They were visceral, real, and they were keeping me up at night. By Monday morning, I'd made a decision. I needed to know if it was Finn, and if it was, I needed to tell him how I felt. The idea made me nauseous with anxiety, but I couldn't keep going like this, caught in this limbo of not knowing. I got to work early and went straight to Finn's desk. He wasn't there yet, but his space was neat and organized, with a small, succulent plant on one corner and a photo of a mountain landscape pinned to his cubicle wall. I was about to leave when I noticed something tucked partially under his keyboard. A spool of rope. Ocean blue rope, the exact same shade as the first bracelet. My breath caught. It was him. It was definitely him. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find Finn walking up, his messenger bag over one shoulder. He saw me standing at his desk and froze, his eyes darting to the rope that was now clearly visible. For a second, neither of us moved. "It's you," I said quietly. Finn's face went through about 5 different emotions in rapid succession. Surprise, embarrassment, fear, and then something that looked like resignation. "Yeah," he said finally. "It's me." "Why didn't you just tell me?" He set his bag down slowly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Because I wasn't sure how you'd react. I didn't know if you'd think it was weird or if you'd be uncomfortable, and I didn't want to make things awkward at work. But I wanted to do something for you, something that would make you smile. And I thought if I left them anonymously, then at least you'd have them, even if you never knew they were from me." His vulnerability was stunning. I could see how much this admission cost him, the way his hands were shaking slightly, the way he was still avoiding eye contact. "How did you know my favorite colors?" I asked. "You mentioned them once," Finn said. "We were in the break room, and Maya was complaining about having to redesign some logo, and you said you'd do it in ocean blue and silver because those colors never get old. It was like 2 months ago. You probably don't even remember." But I did remember now. It had been such a throwaway comment, the kind of thing you say without thinking. The fact that Finn had remembered it, had held onto it, and used it to create something for me, made my chest ache. "I love them," I said. "The bracelets. They're the most thoughtful gift anyone's ever given me." Finn finally looked up, and the hope in his eyes was almost painful to see. "Really? Really? But Finn, I have to ask, why? Why did you make these for me?" He took a deep breath, and I watched him gather his courage. "Because I like you, Adrian. I've liked you since my first week here. I think you're brilliant and funny and kind, and every day I come to work hoping I'll get to talk to you, even if it's just about spreadsheets or whatever. And I know this might be completely one-sided, and I know this could make everything weird between us, but I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel this way. The office was starting to fill up around us. People arriving for the day, the hum of computers starting up, the smell of coffee drifting from the break room. But all of that felt distant and unimportant compared to this moment, to Finn standing in front of me with his heart in his hands. "It's not one-sided," I said, and watched his eyes go wide. "I like you too. I've been trying not to, trying to convince myself I was imagining things or that it was just admiration or whatever, but I can't anymore. I like you, Finn, a lot." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. "Yeah?" "Yeah," I said, and I was smiling too, this ridiculous grin I couldn't control. "So, what do we do now?" "Well," Finn said, and there was this playful glint in his eye now, the fear replaced by something lighter. "I was thinking maybe I could take you to dinner, like an actual date where I don't have to leave gifts anonymously and hope you like them." "I would really like that," I said. "Tonight?" "Tonight," I agreed. We stood there grinning at each other like idiots until Maya walked past and said, "Finally," loud enough for both of us to hear, which made us both laugh and break the moment. The rest of the day was surreal. I couldn't focus on work at all. Every time I glanced over at Finn, he was looking at me, and we'd both smile like we were sharing the world's best secret, which I guess we were in a way. My phone buzzed around noon with a text from him. "Still on for tonight? I'm too excited to concentrate on this budget report." I texted back immediately. "Definitely still on. Where are we going?" "It's a surprise, but dress casual. Pick you up at 7? I gave him my address, and then spent the rest of the afternoon in this weird state of euphoria and panic. I was going on a date with Finn, a date with a man, my first date with a man. This was real and happening, and I had no idea what I was doing. At 6:30, I was standing in front of my closet, having a minor crisis about what to wear. I'd changed shirts 3 times and was considering a 4th when my roommate, Tyler, knocked on my door. "You okay in there? You've been making stressed noises for like 20 minutes. "I have a date," I said. "Okay, and that's causing a wardrobe emergency because it's with Finn, from work. It's with a guy, Tyler." Tyler was quiet for a moment, then pushed open the door. "Okay, first of all, congrats. Second of all, breathe. Third of all, wear the green Henley. It makes your eyes look good." I grabbed the green Henley. "You're not surprised? That you're going on a date with a guy? Dude, I've lived with you for 2 years. I've heard you talk about Finn. The way you describe him is not how straight guys talk about their coworkers. I didn't even realize I was doing that." "Yeah, well, sometimes we're the last ones to figure out our own stuff. Now get dressed before you're late." Finn picked me up at exactly 7 in a beat-up Honda with climbing gear in the back seat. He was wearing dark jeans and a gray button-down with the sleeves rolled up, and he looked so good it made my mouth go dry. "Hey," he said as I climbed in. "Hey," I said back. We sat there for a second, and then both started laughing at how awkward we were being. "Okay," Finn said. "Let's try this again. You look really nice, Adrian." "So do you," I said, and felt my face heat up. He drove us to this small Thai place on the east side of town, the kind of hole-in-the-wall restaurant that doesn't look like much from outside, but smells incredible. We got a table in the back corner, and once we'd ordered, there was this moment of silence where we both seemed to realize we were actually on a date and had no idea how to act. "So," Finn said finally, "I should probably confess that I've been planning what I'd say on this date for like 3 months, but now that we're here, I've forgotten all of it." "I've been planning for about 6 hours and I'm in the same boat," I admitted. That broke the tension. We both laughed, and then suddenly it was easy. We talked about everything. Finn told me about growing up in Oregon, about how he'd started climbing in high school and it had become his escape from family drama. I told him about my sister, about how I'd always been the responsible one, the one who followed the rules and did what was expected, and how sometimes that felt like wearing a costume that didn't quite fit. "Is this part of that?" Finn asked gently. "Figuring out you like guys?" "Yeah," I said. "I mean, I think I've always known on some level, but I was really good at not letting myself think about it. It felt easier to just go along with what everyone expected. date women, have the normal life, not complicate things. And now? Now I'm sitting across from you, and all I can think is that this feels right in a way nothing else ever has. Finn reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time we'd really touched, and the contact sent electricity up my arm. His hand was warm and calloused, probably from climbing, and the way his fingers wrapped around mine felt natural and perfect. "I'm really glad you feel that way," he said, "because same." We stayed at the restaurant until they started giving us looks about closing time, and then Finn drove us to this lookout point on the edge of town where you could see the city lights spread out below. We sat on the hood of his car, shoulders touching, and talked for another 2 hours about books and music and all the small things that make up a life. "Can I ask you something?" I said eventually. "How long did it take you to learn to braid rope like that? For the bracelets?" Finn laughed, a little embarrassed. "About 3 weeks of watching YouTube videos every night. I burned through like 50 feet of practice rope before I got the patterns right. My apartment looked like a craft store exploded." "You learned to braid rope just to make me bracelets?" "Yeah," he said simply. "I wanted them to be perfect." I turned to look at him, this man who had spent weeks learning a new skill just to give me something beautiful, who had been brave enough to put himself out there even when he didn't know how I'd react, who was looking at me now with such open affection, it made my heart hurt. "Can I kiss you?" I asked. "I was really hoping you'd ask that," Finn said. I leaned in slowly, giving him time to change his mind, but he met me halfway. His lips were soft and warm, and kissing him felt like coming home to a place I didn't know I'd been missing. It was gentle at first, tentative, both of us learning the shape and feel of each other. Then his hand came up to cup my jaw, and I made this small sound in the back of my throat, and the kiss deepened into something that made my toes curl. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing hard. Finn rested his forehead against mine, and I could feel him smiling. "That was," he started. "Yeah," I agreed. We kissed again and then again, until we were both grinning too much to keep going. I felt light and happy and terrified and exhilarated all at once. This was real. This thing between us was real, and I was choosing it, choosing him, choosing to be honest about who I was and what I wanted. Finn drove me home around midnight, and we sat in his car outside my apartment building for another 20 minutes, neither of us wanting the night to end. "So," he said finally, "can I see you again, like tomorrow?" "Tomorrow's Tuesday. We'll see each other at work." I meant like this, outside of work, another date. "Yes," I said immediately. "Definitely, yes." He walked me to my door, and we kissed goodnight one more time, soft and sweet and full of promise. I watched him drive away, then went inside and collapsed on the couch where Tyler was watching TV. "Good date?" he asked. "The best date," I said. "You're wearing like 4 bracelets." I looked down at my wrist, at the 3 bracelets Finn had made, plus the new leather one. He made them for me, learned how to braid rope just to make me bracelets. Tyler whistled low. "Okay, that's actually really romantic." "I know," I said, and I couldn't stop smiling. "I really like him, Tyler. Like, scary amounts of like him." "Then that's good, right? Being scared means it matters." He was right. It did matter. Finn mattered. This thing between us mattered. And yeah, it was scary to be stepping into this new version of myself, to be claiming this part of my identity I'd been avoiding, but it was also the most honest I'd ever felt. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments and new discoveries. Finn and I tried to keep things professional at work, but it was hard when all I wanted to do was talk to him, be near him, touch him. We started having lunch together every day, taking walks around the block, finding excuses to work on projects together. Maya definitely knew something was up, and a few other people probably suspected, but we weren't ready to make it official office news yet. Outside of work, though, we were inseparable. Finn took me climbing at his gym, and I discovered I loved it even more with him there, watching me, coaching me through difficult routes, celebrating when I made it to the top. I introduced him to my favorite bookstore, and we spent an entire Saturday afternoon browsing and reading passages aloud to each other. We cooked dinner together, watched movies, stayed up too late talking about everything and nothing, and we kept learning each other. I learned that Finn hummed when he was concentrating, that he took his coffee black, but his tea with honey, that he had a scar on his knee from a climbing accident when he was 19. He learned that I was ticklish on my ribs, that I stress cleaned when I was anxious, that I'd wanted to be a writer before I'd convinced myself to be practical and go into marketing. "You should write," Finn said one night. We were at his apartment, curled up on his couch, and I'd just finished telling him about a story idea I'd had. "Maybe someday," I said. "Why not now?" "Because it's not practical. Because I have bills to pay and a career to think about." Finn was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "You know what I've learned? Life's too short to spend it being practical all the time. Sometimes you have to do the thing that makes you happy, even if it's scary or doesn't make sense." "Is that what this is for you?" I asked. "The thing that makes you happy even though it's scary?" "Yeah," he said softly. "You are." I kissed him then, trying to pour everything I felt into it. Because he was that for me, too. This relationship, this exploration of who I really was, it was terrifying and uncertain and completely impractical, but it was also the happiest I'd ever been. About a month after our first date, I woke up in Finn's bed on a Sunday morning. Sunlight was streaming through the window, and Finn was still asleep beside me, his face peaceful and soft in a way it never was when he was awake. I lay there watching him, feeling the weight of what I was about to do settle in my chest. I'd been thinking about it for days, about what it meant to be with Finn, to be in a relationship with a man, about how I couldn't keep living in this space between my work life and my real life, where some people knew and some people didn't, about how I needed to be honest, fully honest, with everyone including my family. Finn's eyes opened, and he smiled when he saw me watching him. "Morning." "Morning," I said. "Can we talk about something?" He sat up, suddenly alert. "That sounds serious." "It kind of is. I want to come out, like, officially, to my family, to our coworkers, to everyone." "Okay," Finn said carefully. "What brought this on?" "You," I said simply. "Being with you has made me realize I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to downplay what we have or pretend we're just friends. You're my boyfriend, and I want people to know that." The smile that spread across Finn's face was radiant. "Boyfriend?" "Yeah, I mean, if you want to be." "Adrian, I've wanted to be your boyfriend since the day I met you." We spent the rest of the morning talking about it, making plans. Finn had been out since college, so he didn't have to go through this part again, but he held my hand and listened and offered advice when I asked for it. We decided I'd tell my family first, then our friends, then work. I called my sister that afternoon. Emma and I had always been close, and I needed her to know first. My hands were shaking as the phone rang. "Hey, what's up?" she answered. "I need to tell you something," I said. "I'm dating someone. His name is Finn, and I really care about him, and I wanted you to know." There was a pause, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. Then Emma said, "Okay, first of all, I'm so happy for you. Second of all, tell me everything about him." The relief was overwhelming. We talked for over an hour, and she asked all the right questions and said all the right things, and by the end I was crying a little bit because I hadn't realized how much I'd needed her acceptance. "Are you going to tell Mom and Dad?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm scared though." "Want me there when you do it?" "Would you?" "Of course, you're my brother. I've got your back." We told my parents the following weekend, with Emma there for moral support. It was awkward and uncomfortable, and my dad got quiet in that way he does when he's processing something he doesn't know how to handle. But my mom hugged me and said she just wanted me to be happy, and my dad eventually said he'd need some time, but he loved me, and that was enough for now. At work, we told our manager first, just to keep everything above board. She was completely supportive and said as long as it didn't affect our work, our personal life was our business. Then we started telling our coworkers, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Maya actually fist-pumped and said, "I knew it," which made us both laugh. The day we made it official, changing our relationship status and posting a photo together, Finn gave me another bracelet. This one was different from all the others. It was made of silver chain instead of rope, with a small charm in the shape of a compass. "So you always know where home is," he said as he fastened it around my wrist. "And where's that?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Wherever we are together," Finn said. I kissed him right there in the middle of the climbing gym, where we'd gone to celebrate, not caring who saw. Because this was my life now. This was who I was. And I'd never been more certain of anything. Looking back now, I can trace everything to those bracelets. To Finn spending weeks learning to braid rope just to give me something beautiful. To his courage in putting himself out there, in making the first move, even when he didn't know how I'd react. To the way those simple gifts opened up a conversation I'd been avoiding my whole life. I still wear the bracelets every day, all of them stacked on my wrist. They're a reminder of where I've been and where I'm going. Of the man who loved me enough to learn a new skill just to make me smile. Of the moment I finally let myself be honest about who I am and what I want. And every time I look at them, every time I run my fingers over the braided patterns Finn's hands created, I remember that love isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet and patient. Sometimes it's in the small gestures, the thoughtful gifts, the willingness to be vulnerable. Sometimes it's in learning to braid rope just to make someone a bracelet.